Hello, everybody, and welcome to our day early comic review video. I'm Jason.
I'm Andy.
And we're with Infinity Flux Comics out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, where every Monday when the new comics have arrived, thank you, UPS, to our store, after we're done bagging and boarding and sorting them, Andy and I divide up the ones that we think most people want to hear about, some of our favorites as well, and we do this spoiler light review show. So what we're going to do is we will tell you about first appearances and collectability reasons you might want these issues. But on the other hand, especially with the issue number ones, we're going to tell you what they really are about, what the art style is. We're going to try to connect the people who want that type of comic with the comic when you go in your store. This is a big week. We have a lot of releases this week, way more than we can go over. So you see the first few we're going to hit here. In total, we're going to do 22 comics. We're going to review them. We've each read 11 of these comics. We're going to show all their variants. We're going to show the incentives. And at the end, we're even going to tell you all the other ones coming out this week as well. So before that, real quick, got to plug our website, infinityflux.net, where you can sign up to be a subscriber for comics if you want to. We already have a lot of you do that. Thank you very much. Very easy to sign up. And when you do that, you can order comics from us. We're taking pre-orders for comics that are coming out. All you got to do is just click the one that you want, and you'll either be able to subscribe to the entire series, so you'll just get them going forward, or just the cover you want by pre-ordering the cover. So that's at infinityflux.net. All right, now back to the show proper. Andy, what are we going over first?
First off, we have our next installment in the Lazarus Planet magnum opus. This is DC Universe Lazarus Planet Dark Fate #1. So how all these kind of have a central idea. This one being Dark Fate. It's hard for me to figure it out. At first, it seems like it's kind of touching on more villains. But that is not all the case here. We've just got a bunch of new characters in this one. So whatever the Dark Fate part of it means, it's still another great entry.
So new characters like first appearance.
First appearances of some characters. So this, like all of them, is an anthology style book. This time we have a Huntress story written by Tim Seeley about actually Huntress going back to Arkham Tower. Now that the Lazarus reign is coming, she's like, a lot of the big villains have left, but there's still some minor villains, and they're kind of unattended in Arkham Tower. And she's going to kind of go in there and make sure everything is good. When she finds, of course, that they are now running the place, the villains.
Again.
And Killer Moth has made himself this kind of supervillain savior. It's very interesting. But the other thing is, some of this Lazarus reign is leaking into the building. And what is that going to affect? Who is it going to affect? You'll have to find out, because it says the story will continue in summer of this year. So don't know in what, but something this summer. I think that's really interesting.
Okay.
Sounds like the Lazarus stuff is going to have a longer tail to it. At least the ramifications.
Sort of a prequel to other things happening in this dawn of DC.
Yeah, for sure. It's even funny because she points out, she's like, I know I'm not going to be fighting any Super Crocs or Four Faces, like what Killer Croc or Two-Face might turn into from this. He might become Four-Face. But our second story is a Doom Patrol story, which we know is getting its own book coming up, its own miniseries. This is written by Dennis Culver, and the Doom Patrol go on an assignment against some evil clowns. So if that sounds horrifying, it is. Also, this is our first appearance of Chainsaw Nun. We talked about her in one of the scratch-off covers that were coming out from our other show. But this does have... You'll have to see who she is and how she figures into the Doom Patrol. But if you're a fan of the Doom Patrol show or anything like that, it is just that weird and zany. I think a lot of people are really going to like that. Then we have one of the big stories in this is about a new character. You may have seen articles about them, called Circuit Breaker. This is a brand new character that his name is Jules Jourdain, and you'll have to read to find out what is his tie to the Still Force, the kind of opposite of the Speed Force. The Still Force has been a big part of his family because of villains like the Turtle and stuff like that. But because of the Lazarus Ray and everything, things get crazy. But that is the first appearance of the new character, Circuit Breaker, that is going to appear next in the DC Pride one-shot that they're going to be doing later this year.
Okay.
Then we have another one. This one is called the Envoy, and this is written by Alyssa Wong, and it stars a character named Xanth, who is an undead, fighting, sword-wielding partner. It seems to be partner of Batgirl, Cassandra Cain, and Constantine. Very interesting pairing there. Very much built on kind of mythology, and even a thing called Spirit World, which is an old DC place. The Spirit World is basically like the afterlife, but that this story will be continued in Spirit World #1, which it doesn't say when it comes out, what it is. We just kind of get a hint at the end of this, what the Spirit World is all about. So a lot of first appearances in here. I can't tell if this character, Xanth, is going by the name Envoy, or that's just the name of the story. Some places are reporting one and the other. Hard to tell, but it is the first appearance. You'll see her on the cover coming up on the variant. But overall, another great issue. It seems like every one of these has like key things why to pick it up, and I think this is another great addition to that.
Yeah, it sounds like for Dawn of DC, they went to a lot of the creative teams and were like, hey, why don't you write some lead-ins that have to do with Lazarus Planet and, the Lazarus Reign.
For sure, yeah, and even the characters that kind of get souped up are very cool. So we've got some variants for this. Now this is the Baranoevo variant, where you can see a doomsday creature breaking out of an egg. This character is not in this issue. I actually think this character was in a previous issue, or at least the Doomsday kind of thing with Martian Manhunter and all of that. So I don't know if it's more relating to that, but it's still a very cool
that makes sense. So it's like, well, we already had this. We want to see a little more of it.
Yeah, then we have the Mustafar variant with Huntress. This is the variant by Haining with our new character there, Xanth. You can see her big sword, very cool. And then lastly, we have this 1 in 25 Burnham variant with the Doom Patrol that we're selling to our customers for $40.
That's funny that you started with an anthology book. With Lazarus Planet, they're all sort of anthology shots. Because I, too, am starting with an anthology book, but this one is from Marvel. It is Marvel Voices Wakanda Forever. So this is the big one-shot for Black History Month with stories that are all either set in or about Wakanda. There are 5 different stories in this. I'm going to tell you what each one's about. I did enjoy this quite a bit, though. And I guess I should start off by saying there's at least one first appearance in it of a Black Panther of the future, they call it. It's like the last Black Panther story. Mm-hmm. And so I'll talk about that one. That's the 5th story. So the first story in this, Black Panther holds a communion with the spirits of past Black Panthers. He has this power. So it's like they're at a boardroom table. And it's neat because if you've been reading the regular series, it's set in current timeline where he's asking, hey, my friend turned on me and this terrible thing happened. How can I stop this from happening again? And he gets good advice from some of the Black Panthers of old. So that's the first story. The second story, there are some students in Wakanda who are getting the history of why Wakanda cuts itself off from the rest of the world. And in this, they find out how severe that is. I mean, you will be exiled or put to death if you kind of take that on. However, you kind of learn that even within that, the people at the top have some mercy. Mm. The third story, which I really liked a lot, it was a Shuri story, and this is more of a premonition tale than anything. In this, Shuri is Black Panther, and she takes on this godlike creature who is sort of an alien, who comes to destroy Wakanda, and this is more like this is going to happen. Like, rather than it being a full story that ends, it's more like this is a premonition of things to come. She will have to deal with this one day, and it could lead to her death. So I really enjoyed that one a lot, and it's really cool to see Shuri as Black Panther.
Yeah.
And the fourth story, we get Shantae's story, who is going through her training for T'Challa's elite guard. And of course, Okoye is doing the training, and she is just beating her down, but has some lessons to teach her to toughen her up. And you get to see how she turns to the tough guard that she becomes. The fifth story is the Last Black Panther story, which is the first appearance of the Last Black Panther. This story is done by Juni Ba.
Oh, cool.
Yes. And the Last Black Panther, what I'll say is it is maybe more suit than person in the suit. But by the end of it, it kind of gains a mission and sort of a soul. You'll have to see how that all plays out. So some very strong stories. I breezed through this. Not that it was fast read, but I enjoyed it as well, I'll say. So we have a few variants for it. We have the Edge variant. We have this one I really like a lot, the Richardson variant. Of course, blue is one of my favorite colors, so that might be affecting why I like that one. And then the last one, the Darbo variant. This shows that Black Panther from the future, but it honestly looks a lot different with the Junji Ba art.
Sure.
So,
okay, next up for me is kind of the first book I've read in the Sins of Sinister story. This is Nightcrawlers #1. So like all of them, this is a 3-part miniseries set in the Sins of Sinister, I guess, timeline. This one takes place 10 years in the future.
It's sort of a possible future because of what he's doing with Moira.
Right. So this one is takes place, actually starts at the Sanctum Sanctorum, where you're introduced to a new, I guess he's the Sorcerer Supreme. It is a very wild book. Of course, this is written by Cy Spurrier. The art is Paco Medina. But Cy Spurrier, he likes his intricate characters, and all you have to do is read his Legion stuff to know that he can bring out some pretty zany stuff in the X-Men universe. So in this, the actual either Sorcerer Supreme or at least a person residing in the Sanctum Sanctorum is a new version of the Spirit of Vengeance that is inhabited Banshee from the X-Men. So this is he actually goes by the name, let's see, what is it? Vox Ignis. So I guess that's like fire voice or something like that.
Latin, all right.
I could work it out. But that is actually kind of our main character in here when he is attacked by what is called the Legion of the Night, which are these hybrids that Mr. Sinister has created, a mix of Nightcrawler and former X-Men. So we have, these are first appearances, I would assume, unless they were in that one shot, but who knows how much of it we'll see. But it is interesting they all get named. So there's Wagnarine, which is the Laura Kinney,
which I think we see on
the cover. Yeah, that's Wagnarine. We have Wallcrawler, which is actually Spider-Man mixed with Nightcrawler, which is pretty cool. We have Auntie Fortune, which is another one you'll have to see. But there is a few others you see, but they're not in the beginning where it tells you all the names of them. But this is a wild issue where, with a lot of the stuff with the Sins of Sinister and Sinister in general, you don't quite know who you can trust. So, and that goes both ways. This new Banshee might have some partners that would appear to be part of Sinister's side, who may actually go against Sinister and work with him. So it's a very, we were talking earlier, who can you trust? Who's truly in Sinister's pocket? Who's not? But this is very interesting with this kind of elite guard that Mr. Sinister has created. One thing I really like, Laura Kinney's Wagnarine, she's got, of course, her claws, but in her tail she has a claw. So her little Nightcrawler tail has a little blade that pops out of it. There's a lot of fun stuff in this, especially I really like that Banshee character. We'll have to see what comes of it, but I would say if you are looking for an easy read, this is not it. I do think this is a pretty dense story. But if you're planning on reading all of the Sins of Sinister story, I think this one is pretty important by some of the stuff that happens towards the end of it. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes, but definitely if you're just looking for, like, I haven't read any X-Men in a while, what's going on here? You may be lost. But I think that's some of the fun of comics, too, is we can tell these crazy stories and these big storylines they've got going on.
Yeah, some go deep lore.
Yeah.
Some are surface.
So this is Nightcrawlers #1. We also got some variants. Here you can see some of those characters. This is the Phil Noto variant. Yes, there's one that's also like part Domino. There's one that's part Sabretooth. Just a very weird mashups of characters. Then we have this Gist variant. That is your Sins of Sinister for the week.
Okay, so I read the first issue of Icon versus Hardware. This is going to be a 5-issue miniseries set in, of course, DC's Milestone, also called the Dakotaverse. This first issue is really cool, and let me tell you why. So Hardware has learned about Icon. You know, Icon, he is powerful. He's like Superman level powerful. He's an alien. He's been around throughout history, too. He first landed in, like, the days of, like, colonial slavery. Well, Hardware knows about Icon, but doesn't really know who he is. He decides, I'm going to study this person, because so far they seem good, but what if they turn not good? Who's going to stop them? So to me, it's a little bit of a Batman-Superman thing going on here. Well, in his research, he ends up discovering a time machine, and this may have something to do with how Icon has been in several different time periods, perhaps. Well, Hardware discovers the time machine. He's able to put it in his own armor, you know, because he's a genius.
Yes.
And he's sort of like, should I use time to fix things or not? And okay, so every time thing you've ever seen or read, people are worried about paradoxes. They're worried about, you know, what'll happen. You know, there's always a Doc Brown going, Marty, don't change things. In this, Hardware, he makes a decision. He doesn't just bumble into it. He goes, you know what? I'm going to chance it. I want to make things better. And he does it kind of selfishly, which is an interesting... Hardware is an interesting character. He is not a perfect hero. And so the first thing he does, he goes back in time to try to resolve some family issues, some personal things. And we're talking like some deep family stuff that you should be scared to know the answer to or mess with. And it kind of shakes him what happens. You know, you'll have to read it. I'm not going to spoil what he does. But from there, he starts fixing things in the Dakotaverse. And as expected, some of it goes well, some of it doesn't go well. But I mean, he just doesn't care. He goes back, he meets himself almost immediately. I mean, he breaks all the time.
All the rules you're never supposed to use.
Which I like. It's like I'm along for that ride. I'm tired of people not trying to fix things and just, you know, going headlong into it. So you'll have to see all the things he does, how it turns out, at least in the first issue. What I could say about Icon in it is he doesn't really fully commit to it till the end. In the end, he kind of, you know, he'll make his appearance and you have to wonder, where is this going now? Because clearly, you know, he's not too happy with Hardware just messing with things. So I think it's a very strong first issue. I enjoyed it quite a bit. As far as I just have one variant to show. Here is the Sotomayor variant. Rocket is in it a lot in a B story that's really interesting, but, you know, I had to tell you more about what Hardware's up to.
Okay, next up, we've got one that you know I'm excited about. This is Masters of the Universe Masterverse #1.
There was no doubt who was going to read that.
I've kind of set myself up as the He-Man expert around here. I was very excited about this. One, it's written by Tim Seeley, who has a very extensive knowledge of the Master Universe lore and everything. He's written a lot of stuff before. And I just kind of like this era they're heading into. I know where everything is kind of like multiverses. You know, DC does it, Marvel does it.
Never heard it.
But He-Man has a fun way of doing it because there's been so many iterations of it and so many interpretations over the years. We have modern ones. We have the classic cartoon. You've got the live-action movie. There's just a ton of it. And they've kind of elaborated on that. So this is, like I said, by Tim Seeley. The bookend parts are by Eddie Nunez, and then we have a story by Kelly Jones and a story by Sergio Aragonés, which, if you put those two next to each other, it is whiplash of the eyes turning pages from one story to the other. So the first, what kind of sets it up is the Netflix version of He-Man is the bookend parts, so it's kind of the more modern looking He-Man. And apparently an adventure has just happened. Skeletor is, crawling back to his lair. He-Man turns back into Prince Adam and is like, man, I wish I was strong all the time, but I'm just this little loser. And Sorceress is at the Castle Grayskull kind of observing this, and she's like, actually, y'all go have your fun. I've got a meeting with somebody. That meeting is with Zodak. And if you don't know Zodak, he's kind of the Master Universe version of Green Lantern. He's a intergalactic cop, but with a little bit more like celestial powers. So Sorceress goes to him and is like, hey, I don't know if I can fully trust this He-Man guy. I don't know if he's going to at some point turn against us. He just seems kind of like a wild card. I'm going to go look through all these versions of him through the multiverse. If you want to sit here with me and watch it, and we can find out, is he always going to turn out good? So that's kind of the setting of this. And we get our first story, which is the one by Kelly Jones. If you know Kelly Jones' art from Batman or Swamp Thing, very heavy shadows, dark. And that is this version of He-Man or Prince Adam, who it seems like has sworn off using the power of Grayskull for some reason. He lives in this very shadowy town. Almost, he's very lifeless. But he goes on a mission into a castle where he confronts some of the darkest Master of the Universe characters, which are some pretty deep cuts. One of them is Batros, which only appeared, I believe, in one episode of the original show. But Tim Seeley's pulling characters out from everywhere. But when He-Man or Prince Adam finally has to call on his power, he doesn't transform into He-Man. He transforms into something else. You'll have to see what it is. Of course, it's Kelly Jones. It is monstrous and scary, but it's also a big reference to an old toy, which is really cool. But what's funny about this is there's no like middle part where it cuts back to the original story and they go, let's look at another one. No, you turn the page from Kelly Jones's dark, shadowy art to Sergio Aragonés, 10 panels per page of the goofiest He-Man and Skeletor you've ever seen.
Aragonés only does Aragonés.
Yes,
stuff.
It is. I mean, if you know Gru, then you can imagine what his He-Man looks like. But this one is hilarious. It goes from one extreme to another, where this one, especially for fans of the toys, will love it, because He-Man attempts to fight Skeletor using every one of the like classic toys vehicles that there were. And you see how Skeletor is not messed with by any of them. He even uses these robotic stilts, and Skeletor's like, oh no, what am I going to do? You're like 2 feet taller than me. It's really funny, but the thing that finally caps it off and makes them maybe not fight, but befriend Skeletor and He-Man, you'll have to see. It is as zany as anything Aragonés has done, and it's also, just that charming. So this is a fun issue that has the two extremes. Highly recommend it.
Is this a mini-series?
It is a mini-series, and each one is going to have, I believe, 2 stories set in different universes. I know one's coming up that's like a Viking one. There's a Viking He-Man and kind of a like undead knight Skeletor. I believe they're even touching on the CG Netflix show. So there's a lot coming up in this. So this is Masterverse #1. And then we've got some variants by our interior artist, which I think is a very smart idea. And you've got you do 2 variants. We've got the Kelly Jones variant. And we have the Aragonés variant, where Skeletor and Sorceress are playing chess using all of the characters. So, very fun stuff.
All right, so I have read a new indie #1 book from Image called Torrent. This is by writer Mark Guggenheim with art by Justin Greenwood. I think the interior art is really well represented on this cover. Like the interior arts look just like this, to tell you the truth. So this is a new superhero book. Image doesn't always do a whole lot of those. You know what I mean? They tend to steer clear. Not that they don't do any, but they limit them because they see that as more Marvel and DC's territory. Yeah. So what sets this one apart? I would say this is a bit more of a realistic superhero book, meaning it's going to get a bit darker. It's sometimes people have to die, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So our main superhero who we see on the cover, her name is Crackerjack, and by night, or I guess whenever is needed, she is a superhero. But by day, she's a mom. She has a son, she has a husband. There's also this sidekick character. He's trying to be her sidekick. She's like, you just stalk me, you follow me everywhere. Named Slipstream. He has kind of speed powers. So those are sort of our two main characters. There are some villains that they take on, but the main crux of the story comes in what happens when her cover is blown and a major villain learns who she is and attacks her family at home. What happens when she loses something or someone very, very close to her? You can see by the end of this issue, this is going to turn into sort of a realistic superhero tale that is going to be one that starts with vengeance.
It's kind of that why superheroes have to keep their secret identities because the ones they love could be hurt.
Mm-hmm. So it's a good issue. The writing is solid. The dialogue is believable. It was fun to read, easy to follow, but not just but simple. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a strong issue that does things you can't always see in Marvel and DC all the time. So, and this is an ongoing series. So that is my quick review of Torrent #1. We have two variants. This is just the B cover of it. You can already see bloody,
almost kind of
angry,
Frank Miller-y, or almost John Romita Jr.
I see both of those in the B cover. The interiors didn't look that way, but I think the book is going to get darker after the first issue. And then here is the 1 in 10 Danny variant. We are selling to our customers for $10. One thing I always think about when there's a new superhero world is what are the names of the characters. So we got Crackerjack, we got Slipstream. The villains, some of the names of those, we've got Mr. Skeleton,
I love
Bruiser, Kill Squad. Almost sounds like Image names, old Image, but it doesn't have that feel. It's definitely, not quite as over the top.
Yeah. Guggenheim has a good history. He was, I believe, one of the writers on the Arrow shows. He's written some really good stuff. So it's cool when they come into the comics world. Okay, next up for me is a book that I don't want to say I forgot about it, but it's been a long time since the last issue of Batman Beyond the White Knight. And this is our final issue.
The last issue, issue 8.
The last issue. And it continues, even when I'm like, it's kind of not in my main radar. I'm still getting this book, but it's one of those, every time it comes out, I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be good. Because it's always good. So Sean Murphy wraps up this story, which is kind of his take on the Batman Beyond universe, but not exclusively. Bruce Wayne is still there. Your cast from this whole White Knight universe is still there. This does a great job wrapping that up. For most of this, Bruce Wayne was trying to stop Terry McGinnis from being Batman. You'll have to see how that goes. You can imagine they end up on the same side. But there's also the thing where Bruce has created a AI version of Joker or Jack Napier that now inhabits the Batmobile. And this is very weird to Harley, who is now, with Bruce. Right. They're a couple now. So there's a lot of stuff going on there that will lead to more, because that's the big thing I want to talk about. There is a surprise appearance by a character at the end, and it's not the one that you may have seen on a variant cover or something that I'm about to show. There's another character, just like how Sean Murphy does his own interpretations of characters. There's a familiar Justice League character that appears, but this time as a agent, like a detective or a cop, that is really, really cool, and that's going to lead into some new stuff. So one of the big takeaways from this is Sean Murphy has kind of an afterword where he talks about his White Knight universe. Now, the first thing that is revealed in here, which is not a spoiler, it's reported other places, but it is what the next part's going to be, which is Batman White Knight presents Generation Joker, which seems very interesting. The art is actually being done by Mirka Andolfo, which I'm very excited about. And it looks like it's going to be a road trip story, but with the Batmobile getting driven by the Joker AI and his kids riding in it as he teaches them how bad the Joker was. But then the other big thing in this is they do announce the next big story that Sean Murphy will be doing the art for, and that is going to be World's Finest White Knight. And you can guess what that entails. You'll have to read his full description of it, but the White Knight universe is only getting bigger, and I think that's awesome. So, a great final issue of this, but if you're worried that this universe is wrapping up, I feel like it's just getting started. We've got some variants for this. Now, this was what they called the spoiler variant. So it's actually kind of, I've seen it on a few websites now. But if you don't want to know, look away real quick. But you'll probably also know what this is. But this was inevitable, but I think this is a super cool cover. And how this comes about, you'll have to see. The other one we have is a Greg Capullo variant. So really cool. I'm looking forward to, and that new White Knight Presents book is supposed to be out in May. So you've got until May for a new White Knight install.
All right, so I read Mary Jane and Black Cat #3. This is the third issue in this 5-issue miniseries. Notice this one does not say Dark Web at the top. So it's not considered a Dark Web tie-in anymore, even though it does continue the plot line that started in those first two that were related to Dark Web. Because that's how Mary Jane and Black Cat got sent to Limbo, where this is set. It's got a great J. Scott Campbell cover, which does not happen in this. They're in Limbo, going through a tower looking for a sword with a demon friend. The premise has been they want to get back to Earth, and to do that, they have to find this sword so that this demon can be the ruler of Limbo. And it's in this tower. All the demons are vying for it. Last issue we saw, as it looks like they were going to team up with this one really big demon dude. Well, that happens, and they have to fight their way through the tower. A lot of other things happen. But honestly, it's a lot of what's happening in the background. You know, for one thing, Jed MacKay, he's the writer of this. The art is done by Vincent Carratù. MacKay is good with that dialogue. So a lot of funny dialogue between Mary Jane and Black Cat and this demon whose name is Sim. And but in the background, you get what Black Cat's thinking about. And she's very worried still because she has not told Mary Jane about what's happening between her and Peter. What's going on with Mary Jane is she's afraid to use her power. Her power, of course, was like a lottery power, and she keeps drawing bad powers. Well, let's just say by the end of this issue, she may figure out why her powers have been so bad lately. And it's really cool. It's like when I read it, I was like, oh, I should have seen that coming. So another good issue of this, just a really great read. The art's awesome, too. And lots of good covers. I mean, if the J. Scott Campbell cover didn't do it for you, we also have this awesome Basil Dua cover with Black Cat going, I don't need Mary Jane on my cover.
I know, it's like, sometimes you're like, oh, there's a hint of the other character. No.
Nope, not at all. And then here is the Gomez Howard the Duck variant. Howard is just sort of lost in that one. It's not where my eyes go to first.
Okay, next up, I've got a couple of Star Wars books this week. So we have Star Wars issue 31 to start off with, and this finds our heroes still trapped in no space, which was, in the High Republic era, the headquarters of the Nile, the big villains there. So it's really cool how they're still crossing over this Star Wars series with something that happened, 200 years before, but also in another Star Wars book going on.
High Republic era.
Yeah, and so this another kind of cool kind of pillar to cement the High Republic and its importance in the current Star Wars era. In the last issue, we met who are kind of stranded in nowhere, which is kind of between space type thing. But we were introduced last time to Captain Blythe. He was on the final page. I would say this is his first full appearance. He's a very interesting character who kind of seems like the mayor of this little community, or kind of just a higher up who kind of speaks for the whole town. And this issue is mostly, I don't want to say mostly exposition because that makes it sound boring, but it's actually very interesting as he kind of explains how they got here, what this was, and more about its tie-in with the High Republic era. There's one other thing that's pretty big where they reveal, especially to Luke, that he may not have been the first Jedi that has been there. So this makes a pretty interesting story, and I'm excited to see where this goes. But another great issue of Star Wars. We've got some variants for that one. So we have the Black History Month variant with Lando, the Donald Glover Lando. We've got the John Tyler Christopher action figure variant with C.O. Bibble, everyone's favorite politician from Phantom Menace. We've got this great one, which is part 4 of the Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary, this time with Max Rebo. We've got this 1 in 25 Wingard variant that we're selling to our customers for $35. This scene doesn't really happen considering Luke doesn't have his lightsaber for this entire issue, but it's a cool cover. The other thing I want to mention is we have Star Wars Bounty Hunters number 31. And the key thing about this is we have another full-page cameo of Inferno Squadron, which they're really hyping up to be a big deal in this. So if you were a fan of those characters from the games and all of that, I feel like this is the last issue that we get before they are fully in the series. It's like last page, the door opens and they walk into the scene. So very cool. This one has some variants too. We've got the Lucasfilm 40th anniversary with Han and Leia. We have the Black History Month variant with Lieutenant Jayla Hayden, who's been a character in this for a while. And that's it.
All right, so I read House of Slaughter issue number 12. This was a good issue. So who's that on the cover? That is Jolie Bouchard, who is the new White Mask Hunter we've met from Jace's past. They kind of came up together. They were trained together. But we just don't know where they lost touch and if they're still friends. You kind of get the idea they're not. And I mean, this cover really makes it seem like she's nefarious. We've learned not all the hunters are really good. And I'll tell you, man, the writing strings you along, because even having read this, I can't tell if she's good or not. So last issue, Jolie showed up and she saved one of the kids that Jace has been sort of training. His name is Sonny. She saved him from a monster. Well, this issue, Sonny is kind of with her, and it's hard to tell. Is she there to help him and save him, or is he more bait that she's using for something? Also, by the end of the issue, you actually get to the House of Butcher. So that's pretty cool. This is actually, the whole storyline is called, Butcher's Return. This is part 2. I'd also like to say, and I think I might have forgot this from last time, but the creative team is actually, the writer is Tate Brombal, and the art is by Antonio Fuso, both of which do a fantastic job. And Tynion and Deladera are on there doing development. So I think that switch happened last issue, and either I said it and forgot it, or maybe I didn't notice. But I thought I'd mention that. And, they have so much that they're working on. I guess they're like, okay, well, we're going to make sure this is going where it needs to, but it needs more pinpoint attention by a creative team that's only working on this. And I mean, if this issue says anything, they got some good people to do it. The other thing I'll say is Jolie Bouchard, she's clearly very Cajun. Try to hear it in the writing of the dialogue. Luckily, they don't do all the inflecting.
I was going to say, it's not 90s Gambit.
The other weird thing about her, though, she has 2 different colored eyes. One is green and the other it looks gold to me. So Cool issue of House of Slaughter, number 12. You also, of course, get more of her past with Jay, so you get to see them more as kids growing up, but still not to reveal. Nothing's revealed as to, why aren't they friends anymore? Or maybe they are and they lost touch. It really strung me along in a good way of like, man, I can't tell if this good, but I mean, this cover tells me she's bad, but she doesn't act that way. Just a few hints. So here are the variants. We have yeah, oops, there we are. The Luckert variant. And then we've got this really cool Deladera variant. See, she looks kind of evil, but she's killing monsters and saving kids. And then there's a black and white one per store version of that we're selling for $10, which I really kind of like that one in black and white. Mm-hmm. Usually color is my preference, but a lot of good line work in that and the sketchiness of it. And then there's a virgin variant of the main cover. It's a 1 in 25. We are selling to our customers for $30.
And I have a new number one to talk about. This is The Last Barbarian. Or The Last Barbarians, plural. So, this is very interesting. This is by Brian Haberlin and Hannah Wall. But Brian Haberlin does his kind of first build on writing and does the art. If you're familiar with, what was it, Hellgate? He had a series just previously that had like a Spawn variants and stuff. You may be familiar with his style. So to begin with, I would say the style of this book is very digital, but in a very distinct way that he does.
The cover looks sort of almost painted style.
Yeah, it's kind of a mix of that with some hard edges, like black lines, but then some of the backgrounds are very digitally painted. But it all very much works. You can tell he is a master of his craft of doing it. And a lot of his stuff has been that way. So, and this cover's by him too. So if you like that, some of the interior looks like that. Now, I actually think the story is really interesting for this. So this exists in kind of your... I don't know how classical kind of D&D fantasy world it is. Enough where there's, giants and probably trolls and orcs and that kind of thing. But it's kind of the dirty part of it. It's like, this isn't a glamorous world. This is, you're just scraping to get by. And that's where we meet our character, Sylv, which is short for Silver, and her brother. And she takes care of her brother, and her brother's kind of I believe they say he's like 7 foot something, like he's kind of a giant. But it's kind of her job to take care of him. And because of this, she has not been able to join a guild. Now, in this world, basically, if you're not in a guild, you are like shamed. Like, your whole goal is you're a member of a guild and you work together to further that guild, and it's kind of a community, and if you're not part of the community, you're worthless.
Joiners only. No non-joiners in this world.
So, because of, one, she's got a little bit of a temper problem, but also her brother is kind of destructive. She hasn't been able to join up with one, or all the ones she's joined up with have kicked her out. So she's on her last leg as she you see her kind of work a mission just to make enough money for like food and lodging. Something goes wrong and they refuse to pay her. It's just, she's down and out on her luck. But that's when a cleric shows up at this bar she's at and makes her an offer for a job that everyone says, don't take that job. He's scamming. Every other person is told no, but she really doesn't have much of a choice, so she is going to join up on this mission, and we'll see how it goes. But I thought this was a great first issue, especially if you're a fan of that kind of, not high fantasy, but kind of medieval to high fantasy. I thought this was really good. And it teases at the end some other characters that will be coming into it as well. So this is your main character, Sylv. And all these variants are done by Haberlin. So this is a character you do not see until the end. but seem to be pretty interesting. She's featured on a couple of the covers. On that one as well. And lastly, we have a Virgin variant of the A cover, but they're all just cover price.
Okay, I read the second issue of Wasp. So this, of course, is written by Al Ewing with art by Cassia Nye. I like the art style of this. It just has sort of like a bit of a lighter touch to it than like a heavy action series or your average, Marvel book. It's just sort of like a lighter touch, and the coloring almost looks like it's got like a hint of watercolor to it. Clearly it's not watercolor, but it's got that hint to it. It works really well. It just makes it stand out. So, of course, last issue we had where Janet and Nadia were attacked by this villain Whirlwind, and once they stopped him, he's like, I was forced to do this. Somebody's controlling me, a much worse villain. So a lot of this is them unraveling the mystery of, is that true? What does that mean? Other high points in this, they get attacked by a sky full of wasps and have to fight them with almost no powers. And you'll have to see how that goes and who these people are. Plus, what is the group Whisper? Who are they? What do they do? And what does that acronym stand for? You'll learn all this in Wasp issue number 2. So variant-wise, we have the Zitro variant. And we have this Ruin variant, which is Infinity War inspired.
Cool. So next up, I've got issue of X-Men. This is X-Men number 19. So we don't always go over every issue of X-Men, but occasionally I like to check in on it, and I'm really glad I did with this one. I thought this was a really fun issue. So, of course, we're still in the Krakoan age of the X-Men, but it's kind of a separate little story, it seems like, where Forge and Monet have actually got one of their portals that goes from Krakoa to somewhere else, kind of their teleporting portals, that is attached to they don't know what. So it was originally, they say on the other end is Nowhere. You'd be familiar with Nowhere from Guardians of the Galaxy, the celestial head that's like a base. Well, recently that got thrown through a black hole. And they say, if it was completely destroyed, this gate would be gone. It would have died. But it's still open, and we're going to attempt to go through it. Now, it's very funny how you find out how did they get the other side of the gate on Nowhere. Has a little bit to do with cable and time travel, of course. But so part of this issue is Forge and Monet attempting kind of this, who knows if we'll come back from this space sci-fi. We're going to jump through this. Where is it going to take us? That I really like. I like that mystery of like what's on the other side. But that's kind of the bookend of this issue. And in the middle is Cyclops and the rest of the X-Men are we're dealing with the Brood storyline that's been going through Captain Marvel and X-Men. And a distress signal comes out from Corsair of the Starjammers, also Cyclops' father, about a Brood attack. And so we get a little bit of a like Ridley Scott alien story where you have the X-Men going through this derelict ship that there's Brood all around them, but you can't see them. And so much of an homage that we may even have a chest burster homage that is very horrifying. You'll have to see how the X-Men deal with that. But I thought this was a really fun issue. It does end up back with the Forge and Monet story where they do come out the other side of the portal, but you'll have to see what they find because it is very weird, but makes me really intrigued to read the next issue. So that is X-Men number 19. And we also have this really cool Terry Dodson and Rachel Dodson homage variant, even that classic title. Mm-hmm. And we have this 1 in 25 Slimy variant. That we have the older version of Wolverine Laura Kinney that we're selling to our customers for $25.
Okay, so I read I Hate Fairyland issue number 4. I enjoyed this one again. The cover does represent it well. Let me explain. So this, of course, is written by Scotty Young. The art is by Brett Bean, never to be confused with Sean Bean.
Never again.
Never. Ever. And okay, so in this issue, Gert, her friends kind of have an intervention for her. But it's not because of her excess drinking. It is for perhaps hygiene reasons. Well, Gert goes on a hygiene quest. She's sent off on a hygiene quest, but of course there are hidden dangers. There's a great 2-page spread of a character being digested by a creature and all the systems they have to go through and where they might come out. I had to stop and show Andy. This 2-page spread was just so funny. And past that in this issue, Gert is unclothed for way more than half of it. Some messed up things happen. That's all I need to say.
Yeah. If you know I Hate Fairyland, you know exactly what you're in for.
Yeah. So another issue that I thoroughly enjoyed, and we have this one variant by Brett Bean.
Okay, next up for me, I have 8 Billion Genies. This is issue number 7.
Penultimate. We can say the
Penultimate
word.
issue. Always love when we can use that term. So this issue is really interesting because for a lot of it, it kind of feels like the last issue. Because if you consider, this one is actually 8 decades after the Genies have shown up. So, first 8 decades. So, almost all of your characters that you followed who were adults are dying off at this point. It's very sad for most of it because...
If I last that long, 8 decades, I'll take it.
Because they go... it starts, I believe... It doesn't immediately jump to 8 decades. It first starts with, like, this is a couple years after the Genie showed up. Okay, here's a couple more years. And so you're kind of piecing together some other character stories, but it all eventually leads up to 8 decades later. Really fun. Very sad to see the end of some of these characters, but I always love to see, this far in the future, how many Genies are left and what are they being used for and what kind of industries have risen up around the idea of Genies and bartering with Genies and all of that. Very cool. Another great addition. But if you thought like, it's going to wrap up, because I know the next one, I believe, is 8 centuries later. It says, even on the final page, a little genie pops up at the bottom and says, there's one more issue left, but if you think you've seen anything, you've only seen a fraction of this story. So it heavily implies that there is a whole nother element to this story we do not know yet. I think it's really cool because we don't even really know the origins of the Genies. We don't know anything like that. And it says the next issue, the ultimate wish will be made. So I'm very excited about it. I love a issue that makes you even more excited to read the next one just with a few teases. So that is 8 Billion Genies, number 7. And we've got this fantastic variant cover with Spawn and his Genie. You would imagine somewhere in the 8 Billion Genies universe, somebody wished that Spawn was real. So that's probably where that comes from.
Okay, so I read the 3rd issue of Invincible Iron Man. Check out this cover with an evil-looking Tony Stark. Or is it? So this, of course, is by Jerry Dugan with art by Juan Frigeri. And somebody's been trying to ruin Tony Stark's life. They've done all kinds of bad things. They seem to be an imposter. And last issue, Tony discovered one of his friends has been killed. So this issue, Tony comes face to face with the imposter. He also teams up with War Machine. But more than that, even though he finds the imposter, it doesn't mean he knows who is behind the whole thing. We're going to have to wait till next issue to see if maybe he can figure that out. So let's see. I think... Oh, yeah. And he does know. We get the history of the friend who is killed, and the history is really interesting. That's like a good third of the story because it goes all the way back to Armor Wars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's what's going on. Invincible Iron Man number 3. Here we have the lobe anatomy variant. Only goes that far into
I was
the
about to
armor.
say they couldn't get any further than just the armor.
Yep, the Stark Tech, man. Can't get past it. Here is the Mana Planet of the Apes variant. And lastly, we have another in the series of the Leighton armor variants. I wonder how far this is going to go.
I know.
A while, I would.
There's been a lot of armors.
There has.
Okay, next up for me, we have Spider-Man issue number 5. So this is the Dan Slott, Mark Bagley Spider-Man, still dealing with the end of the Spider-Verse. And this one is kind of, I don't want to say it's a detour, but in a previous issue, one we've got Peter Palmer in an issue, but the other surprise in that one is at the end, in the 616 universe, there was another Peter Parker who was a scientist, and this is our origin story of that Peter Parker. It's actually very interesting where it is very similar, like he gets bitten by the radioactive spider, and then Cindy Moon gets bitten by the radioactive spider, Silk. But what happens when Silk kind of gets to the superheroing first, and Peter Parker, even though he still has powers, kind of becomes the other character. This is a very interesting story that leads kind of right up to the moment we saw with this character before, but really expands on what part this character could play in the overall Spider-Verse story. So that is issue number 5 of Spider-Man. And we've got some variants for it. We've got, always nice to see, Humberto Ramos drawing Spider-Man. He could do it with his eyes closed now.
Just like Dan Slott can write Spider-Man with his eyes
closed.
closed.
Exactly. The whole book is done blind. We have the Darbo Black History Month variant, Photon.
I think Dan Slott will explode if he doesn't write a Spider-Man script for a year.
Yeah,
he's like, I'm done, and then a year later he's like, I'm about to explode.
It's like the crank version of writing comics. And then we have the Planet of the Apes variant, where this time they're going up against Black Suit Spider-Man.
He's written a lot of really important, things. He's debatably one of the more, bigger Spider-Man writers of
that's
the
probably
last
made the biggest changes to the overall thing. I mean, he created the Spider-Verse.
Yeah. Okay, so I read Grimm, issue number 8. So this comic, I enjoy it every single time. I say, come for the story, but stay for the art. I just go on and on about how much I like Flaviano's art. So this is written by Stephanie Phillips, with art, as I said, by Flaviano. Just the interiors are great. Just a master of doing dark paneling that you can still see everything well, and it's all just like really awesome and cool. A lot of good cinematic shots, a lot of like, I'm going to show somebody's boot, but that's really appropriate right now. It gives the right feeling of authoritative thing instead of showing the whole person, and just a lot of good choices in the art as well. So in this story, we get to meet Jessica's mom. We just found out about her the other issue, and she pulls off a very cool prison break that's also very violent. We also get to see what's going on with Adira. Adira, of course, is the one who sort of set up Jessica, and she has now taken over the land of the dead. And we get to see how she holds on to that power with an iron grip. She does some mean things to some people in the land of the dead. Lastly, we do have Jessica in this story. She's actually not in it a whole lot. We're expanding, seeing what other people are doing. But Jessica is in it, and she gets a new title she very much doesn't want, and a new quest she wants even less. So just a lot of things happen. Another good issue of Grimm. And here we have the variants. Here's the Florentino variant. And then there's a black and white of that one. It's a 1 in 10 we're selling to our customers for $10.
Okay, and last one for me is Hulk number 12. So we are getting close to wrapping up this run of the Hulk. Now it is Ryan Otley going solo on writing and art, But where the last one was that Godball story, that was kind of a fun but a fill-in issue. This is getting back to the main story as Bruce Banner actually is teaching the Hulk, of course, inside his mind, how to focus and preparing him because they know they're going to have to fight the Titan character, the Hulk's Hulk coming up, who is kind of slowly creeping in on them as they're in there. The other cool thing about this is Bruce Banner has to get help from Doctor Strange and Strange Academy. So you actually see a lot of the Strange Academy kids there, and Doctor Strange, along with a couple other fun surprise characters. So another fun issue as we are getting close to the end. I believe 14 is the last issue of this run. Only 2 issues left. Got some variants. We've got the Dan Jurgens variant. Very 90s Hulk.
Hulk guns. The Hulk guns.
We've got our Planet of the Apes variant. Where can you spot Hulk in this crowd? We've got the No Prize variant for your envelope needs. And lastly, we have this Foreman 1 in 25 variant that we're selling to our customers for $25.
All right, so I have 2 left. I don't know. What happened was you started and then you put your Star Wars together.
Yep.
But I have 2 left. So I read Fantastic Four issue number 4. This, of course, is by Ivan North with art by Ivan Coella. This awesome Alex Ross cover to it. So this issue, the Fantastic Four are finally going to get back together, but it isn't that simple. In fact, the story is told in 2 different parts that are 5 months apart, where we see where has Ben Grimm gone, where is him and Alicia. But that story is really important because it tells the tale of what broke up the Fantastic Four all these months. Why have they been scattered? You will learn that by the end of it, and it's a little bit sad. It's definitely a somebody chose a lesser of evils thing, and it really messed up Ben Grimm and Alicia's family. And you see why they're scattered. But then you also see where they've ended up and how are the Fantastic Four going to get Ben and Alicia back. So that's what's going on in this issue. Another cool issue of Fantastic Four. And then as far as the variants, we have this Alan variant. Alex Ross doesn't have enough art to do, so he did a variant as well. And then we have this Cabal Planet of the Apes variant.
They work really well on that.
With them there.
The science and the era and everything.
You could see them, being in a Planet of the Apes story. So the last one I'm going to go over is Captain Marvel issue number 46. This is part 4, I believe, of the Revenge of the Brood storyline, which is some X-Men characters and Jessica Drew teaming up with Captain Marvel. So, Rogue and Binary, the force that was in Captain Marvel, have been kidnapped by the Brood and are being used as hostages to bring these people onto their ship. So this story, you get to see them fight through a lot of Brood, try to figure out where Binary is. The question is Binary changed by what the Brood has done to her? You'll have to read the issue and see what you think. You may or may not know the answer by the end of it, though. Also, where is Rogue? She's not been found quite yet. Lastly, what thoughts are on Captain Marvel's mind so much in this? What's on Carol's mind so much that Psylocke has to literally tell her, you need to think quieter? That comes up. There's some really good dialogue between both of them. So here are your variants for that. It is the Greg Land variant. And then we have a Peach Momoko Planet of the Apes variant. So that is us going over 22 different comics that are all coming out this week. Yes. But that is not all. There are more comics coming out. We always like to list those, just so you know these other things are coming out as well. So also, others to mention, there is Avengers Forever issue 14 is coming out this week.
We've got Marauders issue 11.
Monica Rambeau Photon issue 3 is out.
We've got Murderworld Moon Knight one shot. Very cool.
I almost grabbed that one, but you've been reading all the Murderworld. I read everything Moon Knight, so I will be reading it. But I'm sure a lot of you are going to want to pick that up. Even people who haven't read the Murderworld stuff.
Yeah.
That. There's Spider-Man: The Lost Hunt #4.
Wolverine #30, which is a pretty big issue between Wolverine and Beast.
X-Treme X-Men issue #3. I had to say it that way. X-Treme X-Men.
Batgirls #15.
Scooby-Doo. I'm sorry. He doesn't get top billing. How dare I? Batman and Scooby-Doo
There we go.
Mysteries
Scooby-Doo
#5.
belongs after Batman. We have Batman Incorporated #5.
Batman: The Adventures Continue Season 3 issue #2 is coming out this week. Don't miss that. That issue #1 was very popular.
We got Danger Street #3.
I Am Batman #18. It's the final issue, and I did kind of skim that one. And Jace, he learned some pretty important things about his family lineage and how maybe he's not as much a fox completely as you thought he was.
We have Swamp Thing Green Hell #2. It's been a long time since #1. So don't forget to pick that one up if you remember liking the first one months ago.
Yep. Wildcats #4 is out this week.
We have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue 137 and Armageddon Game #5.
Gunslinger Spawn issue 17 is out this week.
Image 30th Anthology #10. That's the issue with the new Bitterroot story.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers hits issue 105 this week.
And we got return of Mark Miller's Nemesis Reloaded with issue #2.
And Nightclub #3,
Yep.
his $1.99 book that has been really good so far.
Really good. We also have They're All Terrible #2, which is the Bad Idea
Bad
book.
Idea book, which has a great cover.
Oh,
If
yeah.
your shop has Bad Idea, the cover on that really stands
We're talking about that like, it's kind of a cool tattoo design.
I could totally see that. And lastly, Walking Dead Deluxe 57 is out this week. So including the 22 we went over, that's 45 books. That's
Gosh.
why we don't go over all of them.
I'd have to start reading yesterday.
Seriously. All right, well, we hope we have done our job and told you enough about these books that you know a little bit more of what you're going to pick up this week at your local store. Thank you, as always, for watching. And thank you to anyone who has started buying some books through us. That's cool. If you're supporting your local store, that's totally cool.
Right.
You know, we're all about supporting your local store. But if you're looking for a place to buy a few books or all your books, we have our website. We will sort of leave you with that again. We're at infinityflux.net. Currently, we are just getting comic subscriptions are the way we're doing it. We are going to sell the new books on the site soon enough, but right now it's just comic subscriptions where you sign up. If you come back Friday, we'll do our FOC show where you can go through all the new books with us. And it's very easy to order them, very easy to subscribe, or just get the covers you want. I'm so happy we can offer this service. So anyhow, infinityflux.net is where that is at. And that is it. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you next time.